All right, welcome everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us for this Taste of Success in Policy. We are thrilled to have you all here, our alumni, our students, and I want to give an extra big thank you to Mike Cruz, who organized all of this. We're really excited to see how this goes. Just so that students know, this will be a pretty casual conversation. If you have a question for our alumni panelists, feel free to just raise your hand or put it in the chat, whatever you'd prefer. Feel free to turn videos on and off. Again, however you're comfortable. Hoping this will be pretty casual and just a good chance to all connect. My name is Emmeline Pratke. I am a career and internship specialist with SuccessWorks, specifically for the career community of government policy, international affairs, and law. So I am the advisor for all L&S students who are interested in those career fields. So I'm really excited to have you all here today. Definitely feel free to follow up with me after the session if you have any other questions. And I think we are ready to go ahead and get started. For our wonderful panelists, if you wouldn't mind turning on your video if possible, but muting your mics whenever you're not speaking, just to kind of help reduce some of the interference and the background noise. I'm sure you're all used to this virtual environment at this point, but always good to have another reminder. So just based on the order of my screen, if Renee, would you mind giving us just a quick introduction of who you are, what you do, and how you got here?
Sure. So can you hear me okay, first of all? Excellent. So hello, everybody. My name is Renee Walk, and I am the lead policy advisor for the state of Wisconsin Department of Employee Trust Funds State Group Health Insurance Program. And so I work on health insurance policy for state workers, public employees, mainly around health program and health benefit coverage. We also work on some other associated benefits, but I make my way here via being a UW grad a couple times over. I went to UW for my undergrad and majored in philosophy. No one was hiring, and so I had to go back to school. I got a master's in public health from UW-Madison in 2012, and I have been in and around the public health and health policy space ever since.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Roland, would you like to go next? Oh, I'm sorry, we aren't able to hear you.
I forgot to turn myself on. I was going to say I benefit from Renee's work because I'm a retired state employee, and so make use of the health insurance for us. I went to UW-Madison in 1975 and graduated with a bachelor in economics and also couldn't find a job. So after doing various part-time jobs, I actually went into the Peace Corps and did work with municipal government in the Philippines for planning efforts, census work, things like that. After that, I'd always had a desire to work in the public sector, but had difficulty finding the way in, shall we say. So after 3 years in that role, I came back to UW-Madison and got my master's in public policy and administration. And from there, I've done a variety of jobs. I worked for a nonprofit organization that was interested on taxation, was a legislative aide for a short time. And then also for the last 25 years before I retired, I was involved with the biggest policy legislation that's always passed every 2 years called the biennial budget. And so I understand clearly the linkage between budget numbers and policy in the budget. So.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. John, would you like to go next? And I do just want to let you know we aren't able to see you. So if that's just how you prefer, that's totally fine. But either way.
Let's see if this helps. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Now can you see me?
Now we can. Yes, thank you.
Yep. Hello, everyone. John Stanoch. I live in a suburb of Minneapolis, Minnesota. I am currently, I guess, semi-retired is the way I put it. I'm on the board of a large regional health insurer and chair that health insurance foundation board. And I also do some work as a lawyer. Lawyer by background and training. When I was at Madison, I interned for a governor in Wisconsin, and that led to some great opportunities to be involved in government. When I came back, I did a year of graduate work at the university and then went to law school. First part of my career, I was in government. I worked for an incumbent governor. I then was appointed to district court judge, served for 8 years in that role, then 2 years as chief deputy attorney general for the state of Minnesota, then did something completely different, went and ran a large telecommunications company that eventually merged with CenturyLink, which you have in Wisconsin. And when the company was sold to CenturyLink, I was going to retire, but went on to a third career. So I had the government, private sector, and then I was blessed to run Ronald McDonald House Charities the Upper Midwest as its CEO, and then did a couple interim things as interim president of the Science Museum of Minnesota and the Minneapolis Regional Chamber of Commerce. The common thread in all that is I'm a 1980 graduate of Wisconsin, political science major, and my liberal arts education prepared me for everything along the way. And I'm currently on the Letters and Science Board of Visitors and was previously on the Political Science Board of Visitors. So even though I'm a Minnesotan, I'm a big Wisconsin fan and happy to be here today.
That's wonderful to hear. Thank you so much. And I believe our final panelist, last but certainly not least, is Marie. If you want to go ahead, we are ready for you.
Yes, okay. I think I've got myself unmuted there. I am also a UW-Madison grad, a poli-sci and history major. I got my start in policy through politics. So while I was in college, I interned on the political side for 2 political campaign committees, and then sort of parlayed that into a job after graduation. So I've worked for the Senate Majority Leader in Wisconsin, and I actually just had my last day yesterday working in the state Senate. And then on Monday, I'm beginning a new role as in the economic development field. So I've mainly worked on economic development policy in the state Senate for the past 5 years, and I'm venturing a little further into that field specifically.
Thank you all. It's wonderful to see so many different kinds of backgrounds and areas of policy represented on this call. It's going to be a really fantastic way for kind of students to see all the different elements of this field. So speaking of, students, go ahead and start putting your questions in the chat or raising your hand. But just to kind of kick us off, I'm really curious to know, how did you kind of find policy? How did you decide that this was an area you wanted to come to? Was it something that you planned and knew that you were interested in, or something that you kind of found later? And if Renee, if you wouldn't mind kicking us off again, that would be wonderful.
Sure. Policy was definitely not a planned career path for me. Policy was something that I found. I began really looking at a practitioner approach and, starting with an MPH, looking at how to, build community and be in the community, and quickly discovered that he who holds the purse strings holds the solutions and drives the direction. And so that's where I really started getting into, it's where I joined the Medicaid program. I started with the Medicaid program right as I was finishing my master's degree, and found a lot of really great opportunities to drive long-term, broad-scale solutions by defining the policy that would set those solutions in motion. And so, I'm definitely not much of a planner, but I think that it was a good move for me in terms of really realizing what I truly wanted to do in terms of making a difference.
It's great to hear. John, do you want to chime in?
Sure. So for me, it started at a very early age. I remember I was in 5th grade and I woke up to my parents sobbing in the living room, and it was the morning after Robert Kennedy had been shot in Los Angeles. And my mom had been politically active, and that year it was just a confluence of events. Hubert Humphrey ended up being the Democratic nominee for president that year. And that started a political involvement. And from politics, I quickly learned that if you're serious about the craft of politics, policy is the reason that you're in the work. So when Humphrey came back and ran for the US Senate, in 1970, I was a 7th grader and took the bus downtown and was the office boy running messages around. And that started this whole thing right there. It just stayed in my blood.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And, I can definitely see some potential connections between, that time and what we're kind of going through now, a very interesting political time. Marie, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I originally thought that I was interested in education. I thought that, if we could really change our society if we helped kids early on. And when I studied abroad during my time at UW-Madison, I went to Ghana and I realized that there were all of these super highly educated people who were leaving their country, like a classic brain drain phenomenon, because they couldn't find employment, even though they had, in theory, done everything right, checked all the boxes, and gone all the way through school. And that's when I started to realize that specifically economic policy is so important to the vitality and sustainability of the communities that we live in, because if you don't make sure that you fit those education pieces and those workforce pieces and the housing pieces all together correctly, none of those individual pieces will succeed.
That's a really good point. Roland, what about your experience in Peace Corps? Was it anything similar to those or a different kind of experience going abroad?
Well, it was similar, but also a little bit different. Again, I was working at the municipal level, and in the Philippines, the national government has a really strong influence, much stronger than here in the States, although people may wonder about that. But the bulk of the funding for the municipal governments came down from the national government, which kind of I was there during the time of Marcos, so you can imagine kind of how things were directed. And one thing I got involved in just before I left the Peace Corps was a way for one municipal government to come up with its own funding. It would to serve as a center for where vegetable traders could go and buy vegetables from farmers in the area. So that kind of gave the municipal government more independence. So that kind of led to my involvement with policy.
It's really interesting. Well, thank you all for sharing that. I want to make sure we have a little bit of space here for students to, again, just feel free to raise your hand, ask a question, or put things in the chat. You've got some really fantastic resources here. I know you have questions, so now is your time to go ahead and ask.